Mailbag Wednesdays, as always, if you leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts with your question, we will answer it on the show.
Don't know who that guy is.
We had a light turnout. I think people had their attention on other things yesterday.
Yeah.
But we had this one from Lesko. Is Virginia McCaskey actually cursed? And is that the reason all combos of front office coaches, players are typically terrible for the Bears? You don't have to speak too deep on this. I'll say a few things, but you can go ahead and.
First off, let's keep Virginia McCaskey, the 101-year-old saint, out of the conversation. I think it's important to understand that when you're talking about the Chicago Bears, you're talking about one of the most storied franchises in the history of sports, a team that was synonymous for a very long time with winning. And while we haven't enjoyed success in the last few decades relative to what it was for the century prior, I still think that Virginia McCaskey is royalty in our game. Her dad was George Halas. George Halas is a name that rings bells. The GSH you see on the Bears jersey, that's her dad's initials. So let's keep Virginia out of this. I would say this. They haven't gotten some things right along the way. And while there have been times where they have the right coach and they've got the right defense, there's never been the marriage of offense and defense in Chicago. I think if you get the right leadership in the building, which they've tried and tried and tried again to do so, you will have success. I'm not quite sure we're there yet, but I don't like to use the word curses, for Christ's sake. Okay, we're talking about a franchise that's trying to win. Every year there's 31 teams that don't win. The Bears have been part of that 31 for a very long time. We're trying to get out of that conversation. Who knows the answer?
The problem is they are one of the old guard of NFL owners that basically, I mean, they started the team. They come from the family that started the team back when they were
the Bears for
Steelers.
$50.
Yes, exactly. So they did not come.
$50.
They don't have piles of cash on the sidelines the way a Jerry Jones does.
They are all in on the Bears
to invest back into the team. So every dollar that the Bears make is all that they are getting. And it's not like they have the flexibility. I mean, you see it in Cincinnati as well, with Mike Brown there, that it was a family that had the team when the teams were making nothing in the 60s and 70s, right? It was not big business back then. It's only become big business to the point that like we think of it in the last 30 or so years, that these contracts have really blown up. That you have these piles of cash on the sidelines. So there's just, I mean, you go over and look at Soldier Field and it kind of tells the whole story. There's just not the investment. You walk around like the concourse there. There's not the investment getting made back in the team because they don't have the money to do so. They don't have the piles of cash that other teams do, unfortunately. And so it's just a fact of life in the NFL when that's the case, that you're going to be behind the 8 ball in a lot of different ways. And I think they've been stingy in coaches and other aspects of the organization that matters. You know, like when you're not investing in the
and
team,
quite frankly,
you kind of get what you pay for.
The decision makers are far too often not football people.
Yes.
In the Bears organization.
That's a lot of organizations.
There are a lot of voices in the NFL that are listened to intently that probably don't deserve the time of day when it comes to football decision making. Yeah. So when they got Ryan Poles, a former Bear, an O-lineman, somebody that came from Kansas City and was around that pedigree of recent, modern championship Super Bowls. That's a guy that I'll rely on. And his right-hand man is Ian Yates Cunningham, who's a guy that I've known since I was in middle school. He was an O-lineman on the Virginia Cavaliers with my older brother, Chris.
Nice.
So I got to know him. He's a really bright guy. I think they're in good hands there. I would say I just really hope that Virginia McCaskey gets an opportunity. Virginia McCaskey, who inherited the team in 1983, she has seen a Super Bowl, was a part of it as a young lady. Now at 101, I really want to see her have this thing bookended with another Super Bowl in the next few years. It would be nice.
You think they could turn it around?
This year?
Yeah.
No. I think they're cooked. Yeah. I think there's too much infighting. I think they lack inspiration from their head coach. You can just take a look at Evan Washburn's interview with Matt Eberflus coming out of the tunnel in the previous game. They said, "What did you say to your team?" He said, "Well, I told them the score, and I said they have each other." I'm like, that sounds like a mom who's given up on a couple kids who have been really bad behavioral on the day. And she's like, you know what? I'm checked out. You wait till your dad gets home. He's going to whip your ass. You know what? But there's no dad that's coming home from the Bears.
Correct.
Right now. That's what you got. And I think Matt Eberflus is a really good coach. His defense has been historically good in Chicago. I played for a team that had a head coach who was a coordinator, Mark Trestman. We had one of the best offenses in football. We couldn't play a lick of defense. And like I was saying, you have to marry success with success on both sides of the ball. Hopefully moving forward, they'll bring somebody in with a little bit of gusto and get things going in Chicago.
Yeah, it's been tough because I think I read a crazy stat, if I'm not mistaken. I think Eberflus is 0-18 or something like that.
Doesn't win on Sundays.
On the road, like on the road. Yeah, like that's insane. And like, I mean, they talk about curses, like losing on a Hail Mary, and then like Caleb Williams essentially coming out and saying maybe that like played into a way they came out versus Arizona, which you hate to hear your quarterback say, right? Like some things, a lot of these rookies are just too honest. Like keep some of the stuff to yourself.
Keep it simple.
Yeah, keep some of this stuff to yourself. But yeah, again, that could be a snowball effect. That Hail Mary loss to the Commanders, and it could start getting ugly in Chicago.
And we're just not creative enough. I mean, you look around the league, and the people that are having success are on the cutting edge of technology, as it were, in terms of offensive scheme. You look around at guys like LaFleur, McVay, Andy Reid, guys that have sustained success in this league. Even our guy Munkin, you know what I mean? Like a lot of this stuff is fresh, and when it's fresh, defenses can't adjust, and when defenses can't adjust, you have success. And week in, week out, you're the team that scores a lot of points. If we can get to that point in Chicago, because we do have the pieces, newsflash, we're not the worst in the league at protecting the quarterback. We're just not great at it. But you know what? There's some other teams that are great at offense that aren't protecting the quarterback either. Correct. Yes, I believe in investing in offensive line, but I think it starts with leadership and messaging and understanding that we're all in this ship together. When you point fingers at one another, there's only one way this ship is going. It's going down.
Next question. Thomas Hauser. Is Smith making a difference for the Lions? I think we all agreed that yes, he is. Yeah. Well, was he the right edge over Clowney or Ojulari?
We thought
would have been sweet, but
I think Ojulari made the most sense to them. I mean, again, they have some D tackles that can push the pocket inside, and with Zadarius Smith, he can move inside. But Ojulari, the way he's been able to burn the edge this year, obviously contract year, right? So and he has had an 8-sack season before. I believe it was his rookie year, if I'm not mistaken. So he's a guy that's been able to get to the quarterback constantly. Love the Zadarius Smith pick. I just think from an attitude standpoint, a guy that's going to be physical against the run, a guy that's versatile. I think Ojulari might have been just a better piece. But again, I love the trade for Smith.
Yeah, I think Smith fits right in. We talked about it earlier. Yeah, he's a guy that likes playing the run. He likes playing the pass. 100%. He has success in both. And to your point about Aleem McNeil, they can pair those guys up, run some games. They can reduce Zadarius Smith. He's got a lot of multiplicity there.
All right, Nolan Henderson asks, is Jonathan Mingo the worst move of all the trades before the deadline? I think it's got to be. Yeah, it's the worst.
I don't even think it's close.
I actually, when I first read this, I thought he meant all time. And so
I saw your note there.
I wrote down Mohamed Sanu's 2019, which was the
crazy
worst move of all time.
Second round.
Just to revisit, he got a second round. The Falcons traded a 30-year-old Mohamed Sanu for a second-round pick to the New England Patriots. He only had 313 yards in 7 games that year with Falcons, and he got cut the next offseason. Didn't even really play that much.
Great arm.
Patriots was the worst. He had
was an ex-quarterback.
An elite. He had
passer
like 3
rating.
Elite throws.
Yeah.
And only threw the ball a few times in his NFL career, but every single one was like nasty.
Could he get more wins than Anthony Richardson?
Oh, my God. That's crazy.
Bring back.
That's crazy. Yo.
Definitely more accurate.
Wild.
All right, Caleb Quinn asks.
I'm so dangerous, dude.
Which team should be a fan of until Which team should I be a fan of until Jerry is no longer with us?
So Cowboys right now you're a Cowboy fan, but you're not going to be a Cowboys fan right now, huh?
I mean, the Commanders look like they're
that's fun. That's
could you actually go? I was going to say have a divisional foe, be a fan. Like
I would say flip sides to Houston, but they suck right now.
The offense for sure.
Yeah, like they can't figure it out. I don't know. Maybe you go west. The Rams are fun.
I would say, hey, the Chargers are a sneaky team right now.
Tough team. If you want to look what a tough team looks like, go watch the Chargers.
Chargers, man. I mean, what they've been able to do on defense with Jesse Minter, like, and those young corners that were essentially 5th-round picks.
Mm-hmm. Mac balling.
Yeah, with Steele on the outside. And then we talked about Cam Hart, too. Honestly, he's played really well. He might, if he keeps playing like this, he might back into that defensive rookie of the year category as well. But I really love what Jesse Minter has done with a lot of these guys. Elijah Molden was a forgotten starter as well. He's gotten, like, the peak amount of talent out of that roster.
Don't worry, you'll get Belichick next
College
year.
basketball just started. College basketball just started.
Belichick and Dallas, that's never going to happen.
There's a lot of teams that play. I think there was like 140 games in the last 2 nights in college basketball. I'm sure you could find something that you could root for there.
That's
All
true.
right. El Jefe asks, want to know your thoughts on Bo Nix? Result wasn't good, but would love to know your thoughts on the tape.
Dude, yeah, you go.
He just misses throws.
He misses wide open throws.
He misses throws.
He missed a home run ball. He had a scrambling touchdown that got called back. It was a huge momentum loss for the Broncos, but it's that home run throw that you got to have.
Yeah, and it's something that we said coming out of Oregon. I think a lot of people got caught up in his completion percentage, but he flipped on tape. It's like his ball placement was not. It was probably – I thought actually Penix was probably the worst of the first-round quarterbacks in terms of like pure accuracy, but then I think Nix was probably the second worst amongst those guys just in a throw-for-throw basis. So it was an issue. I don't think he'll ever be great at it, but I think the rest of his game is NFL ready at this point, that if he can make little improvements and get some wide receivers in there, because that's also part of it, that he's thrown to like Devon Villay. But
the crazy thing is he's overthrowing a guy that he threw to in college for 2 or 3 years. That makes no sense to me. Like, how are you overthrowing Troy Franklin when you've thrown to this guy for the last 3 years?
His arm got stronger. That could be a good sign. You could look at it as a good thing.
Yeah. Game on the line, 4th down. Let me overthrow this guy by 5 yards. Everybody knows you always underthrow a go ball just so the receiver can work back to it.
Especially in that situation. When it's man coverage, the guy in the slot's cooked.
The one thing you cannot do is throw it out of bounds or overthrow him.
That's why Russell Wilson does it the best. He puts so much air under it, and whatever happens, it happens.
Goodness gracious.
But if you're a Broncos fan, you got to be very cautiously optimistic. This is the best. This isn't.
This might be his ceiling.
Who was the Memphis QB who came out that they drafted?
Paxton Lynch.
Paxton Lynch. Yeah.
Oh, I remember him.
This ain't Paxton Lynch. This ain't Trevor Siemian. He's an NFL quarterback.
It's Brock Osweiler?
Might be inaccurate.
Yeah.
Over the course of his career.
He's a serviceable guy.
There's Ruben. What's up, Ruben?
Last question before we get to Ruben here. Dinko says, thoughts on Curtis Rourke? Have you watched a good amount of Curtis Rourke?
I love the Maple Missile, man. I've watched this tape going. So I had the privilege of calling this game versus FAU 2 years ago. This is off the ACL. When the year before, he was the MAC Offensive Player of the Year. Extremely accurate. People don't talk about his athleticism enough. I think that thumb surgery actually helped him in the long term, it will help him because in Michigan, that Michigan State game, he carved them up.
Yep.
I mean, I can't wait. The big question about him is when you look at Indiana, they're blowing everybody out. So a lot of times he's not even playing in the late third or fourth quarter. So the game next week is going to be a big game.
This is Indiana's quarterback?
Yeah, Curtis Rourke.
He's got to play the Ducks.
His name is the Maple Missile.
That's borderline porn star.
Oh, my God. But they play in Columbus next week.
The Maple Missile.
That will be a big game for him in regards to his draft status. Because again, they've had a light schedule.
Oregon.
He's passed with flying colors, but now he's going to see an NFL type defense. So it'll be good versus the Buckeyes.
Problem with Rourke and why I don't think he even makes it to day 2. He has Tua level arm strength. He would be right in the running for weakest arm in the NFL.
Water gun.
And when you got that, you better be perfect or you better be an athlete. Jalen Hurts has a weak arm, but the guy's an athlete, right? Rourke can run, he can move, but he ain't feature him as a runner type of guy. Right. So I think he's behind the 8 ball in terms of draft stock. Now, I compared him to a Gardner Minshew who's weak arm, but still makes plays.
It's actually a pretty good comparison, actually.
That guy, you saw
was accurate coming out of college too. Yeah.
So a lot to like, but when you really have that level of arm talent, you're going to have an uphill climb at the NFL level, and NFL evaluators trying to draft you highly. So